Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and in this video we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be building an M226 rear end for a Nissan Titan. Alright, so a little bit of history on what we're going to be doing today. Basically, I bought a Nissan Titan. It's a 2007 for really cheap. When I bought it, it started, but it wouldn't drive. I was told that the transmission was toast. Again, I got it for so cheap that it was worth it if I had to replace the transmission. So I went ahead and purchased it. I got it home. I started to investigate and found out that the rear end was destroyed. Basically, what I did at this point was, I'm like, let me go ahead and get this thing running and driving. So I went and I pulled a new rear end from the junkyard. And what happened was that rear end was also broken. The first one, spider gears were broken. The second one, the holding pin in the center of the spider gears was sheared. So the second one drove, it just wasn't happy about it. So after that rear end was broken, I said, hey, I got spider gears from one. I have shear pin from the other. So let's go ahead and try to put them together and make one rear end. Well, at that point, what I found out was the Titan came with two gear ratios in the rear end. It came with a 292 or a 336. The rear end that I had originally in my truck was a 336. The rear end that I got from the junkyard to replace it only had the 292 rear end. I pulled a diff out of a Nissan Armada, which was four-wheel drive and had the tow package. Should have had a 336, it wasn't. Pulled a rear end out of a Pathfinder. That one had a 336, but unfortunately the ring gear in Pathfinders is a half-inch smaller than the Titan and the Armadas, so that one wouldn't work either. Basically, what I ended up doing was I just bought a bunch of stuff, and we're gonna rebuild the original rear end, and that's where we're gonna go. So that's what this video is gonna be about. This is my rear end. Now this is the original rear end that came out of the truck. It's a two-wheel drive Nissan Titan. I'd imagine the four-wheel drives are pretty much exactly the same. It is completely stripped right now. Basically, to get all this stuff out is pretty simple. You take off your rear cover here, you undo your 4 bolts here, and your rear end will lift out. These preload adjusters are screw-in, so you just kind of screw those out. Now, one of mine was stuck. Luckily, I got it out without messing the threads up, and I had an extra one from the other rear end. So I'll show you those in a minute. And then the pinion bearing, basically on the back side, back here, inside the middle of the flange, there's a nut. So you want to buy this tool that is basically a flat piece of metal that bolts onto the yoke. That'll hold the pinion yoke straight, and so you can get the nut off, because generally they are super tight. On the original rear end I got, it was not very tight, but you know, we'll just leave that at that. So you pull that out. There's going to be 2 bearings and a seal. So there's a seal all the way on the bottom. Then there's a bearing. Then there's another bearing that sits right in here. And there's also 2 races in there. So you want to go ahead and get a slide hammer with the jaw, 2-jaw, 3-jaw attachment. Pull this race out that way. Pull the other race out down through the bottom. This is one of the pinion bearings. Now the bearings and the races all look the same. So if you look here, this is the bearing. And this is the race. So this part, and again, this is one for the pinion, so it's not gonna be the right side, but this was stuck in here like that, and it'll have a little lip on the end here that you can get the jaw style slide hammer on to pull all these out. Same thing, I think this one actually goes in here. No, it must be the other side. So yeah, but anyway, that's how you get those out, and your new bearings will come with new races. Same thing with the end here. Once you get the axles out, which all you do is you loosen 4 nuts on the back, and this axle will pull out. Now, a lot of people say they can pull them out or pry them out with a bar, but what I did was I had a slide hammer with the axle puller attachment. So basically, it's just something that bolts on where your wheel goes, and it's a slide hammer, so you get bang, bang, bang. They came out pretty easy that way. One of them in the other rear end was stuck. If that's the case, your bearing is probably froze to the race. So you just want to heat up this area right around here, and it'll pull out. The same thing, there's 2 races in here, which again, I'll show you what they look like in a second, but you just slide hammer pull those out with the slide jaw style slide hammer. And that's basically where we're at. We got an empty rear end. So now let's go look at some of the stuff that we got new. Rear cover, I took the rear cover off of the other rear end because it's got these extra fins, keep everything a little bit cooler. We're gonna try to clean that up. These are your bearing caps and your bearing bolts. So you just wanna keep track of these. These are the preload adjusters. Assorted nuts and bolts. New gear set, this is a 354. The only real difference is the number of teeth on the pinion gear. So the 294 has 16 teeth. The 336 has 14 teeth. This one has 13 teeth. Timken set 10 bearings. These are for the axles. They come with the bearings and the spacers that we're going to need. These are the seals for the axles. These are Nissan genuine seals. This whole kit I got from Drivetrain America. Basically, this is a master rebuild kit. It came with everything you see here except for that lithium grease. So basically comes with everything you need, including tooth compound and stuff to seal your cover back up and everything like that. But this comes with everything. So it comes with both your pinion gears, both of your both of your pinion bearings, both of your carrier bearings, pinion seal, new nuts for your ring gear. It comes with your new bolt, new crush washer for your pinion gear, and shims for your pinion. If you're doing this on a Nissan Armada, it does come with shims for your carrier, but we're not going to be using those because we have those adjustable ones. So yeah, this kit should have everything, just about everything we need to rebuild this entire rear end. The brains of the entire operation, which is this Eaton TrueTrack differential, so carrier. So this is, again, obviously Eaton Detroit TrueTrack. It's a lot better than the spider gears that are in there. You guys can do your research, but obviously this one has some helical gears inside instead of those weaker spider gears. I'm told that this thing should be pretty much bulletproof. Yeah, that's about where we're at. The first thing that we need to do is we need to get the pinion in, and that's gonna be the trickiest part, because if you are not replacing your pinion ring or your gear set or your pinion gear or your ring gear or anything like that, then you really won't have to worry about most of this. The pinions from Nissan, so these pinions need to be a certain depth from measurement from the center of the carrier. Now Nissan marks all these, so if you look right here on this one, let's see if you're even going to be able to see it. Yeah, see right here, there's a 0. So that means that this gear works best at a 0 offset from their standard measurement. And obviously we'll go over that once we put it in. But some of them are not set at 0. Some of them can be all the way up to minus or plus 10. And basically you're going to be adding shims, which are these shims here, to your, basically between your pinion gear and your bearing to offset this gear set farther forward and farther back. So since we have a brand new gear set here, it is not marked, it's never been set by Nissan, so we're going to be basically trying to set it up to basically what their standard is, and then when we put the ring gear in, we'll check the pattern and see if we can get the pattern right and everything like that, and if we can, then we'll be good to go. All right, so we got the bearing pulled off of the pinion gear. This was the original shim that was in this gear. So this gear is a 0 gear, so it should have the appropriate shim to make the new pinion the zeroed out with Nissan's specs. So we're going to start there, where this shim is basically 1 millimeter. So what I did was, now I had to put a couple of them together because the kit comes with all thinner ones, but basically I just put them together till I got a matching set that's about 1 millimeter. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use these on the new pinion gear, which is here. So these shims will go in here like this. This will be our starting point. And that's basically the exact same thickness as this one shim here. So we're going to start there. And then what we're going to do is now this bearing is a press fit. So as you can see, it doesn't slide on down there. So what we're going to do is, so we can use this one as kind of our testing gear, we're going to go ahead and bore the inside out so it'll slide on there nice and easy. That way we can use this to make sure that our height is good without having to press and remove the new bearing. So another thing I just noticed with these is, as I'm sitting here looking at these two gears, let me bring it down here so you can see a little better. So you can see that with no shim on this one, there's almost nothing here, but on this one has this nice little lip. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and measure both of these, and we're going to take the difference out of our shim pack. So this one is, let's get a spot that's not broken. like 41.3. And this one is 41.5. So basically this ring gear is about 0.2 of a millimeter larger. So we're going to take 0.2 of a millimeter out of our shim pack and go from there. All right, so now that we got our bearing board out, we're basically just going to drive these new races in. Well, I mean, I don't know if the top edge is flush with the housing or whether it sticks out a little bit. I can't remember. It's funny because that one measured a couple tenths of a millimeter larger, but these were not hard to get out. I smashed them out really easy. I actually used a slide hammer to get them out. All right, so now we got the pinion gear in, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to check the, we're going to be checking the preload on the bearing, just to make sure that our bearings are seated and everything like that. As you can see, I tapped both sides just to kind of set the bearings, and there's basically no resistance now, so we're going to go ahead and grab the inch-pound wrench and measure preload. You a loose for this, and then they give you a after the carrier's in. It's supposed to be more, yeah.
Yeah, well, see, again, that's with the forge. You know, you don't, the pinion don't have to be in there. You can spin that carrier. You can pretty much feel it.
That probably seems about right, I guess so.
Now, do you have the side shims that came out of this?
Yeah. Well, there was no shims.
Oh, it's just.
You mean on like the carrier?
Yeah.
No, there's no
so
shims.
It's just an adjuster.
Yeah, all it is that adjuster. I would imagine you could probably put shims in it if the adjuster wouldn't get you. But the adjuster goes forever. It's actually kind of weird how that thing's. All right, so now that we got the pinion in, we have the preload set to within spec, which is 15 to 33 foot-pounds. Basically, you saw me doing that earlier with this gauge here. Remember, this is the old bearing, so you know it's close, but this should give us our height. So now, the height for Nissan from center line to the back face of this gear is 109.5. So we have this flat bar here, and what we're going to do is we're going to lay this across here. Now Nissan does make a super fancy tool that bolts in here to measure all this, but obviously I don't have it. So I believe, let me check my measurements here. All right, so the total spec from the back side of this pinion gear to the center line of this bearing is 109.5. Our pinion gear should be about 41.5 now. So if we take that out, so we should have from the face of this gear to center line of this bearing, we should have 109.5 minus 41.5, which is, so if I'm doing this right, from the face of this gear to the bottom of this flat bar, we should have about 68 millimeters. Look at that. 68 on the dot. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and press the bearings onto the carrier and drop the carrier in here and see what we can get with that. All right, so we got our carrier bearings. Oops, kicked you. We got our carrier bearings on. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to clean up this edge and this edge with the file, and then we're going to bolt the ring gear on. We're going to use these bolts to draw it up into position, and then we'll take them all back out, put thread locker on them, and torque them down. All right, so we got our carrier bearing preload adjusters in. We got our ring gear on. Basically, we're just going to drop it in now and set some preload on the carrier and measure backlash. All right, now that we got the caps tightened down, what we want to measure is we want to measure our, basically we're measuring our carrier preload now. So we know that our preload is set on our pinion gear, but what we're going to do is we're going to spin this again now, and we should get anywhere from 22 to 46 foot-pounds, and that's going to tell us our preload on our carrier bearing, which we basically have done now because it's exactly the same. So what we got to do is flip this guy over, and the way you adjust preload is we're going to spin these guys right here. So these spin in and out. That's how we're going to be adjusting our preload. Alright, so I'll show you what I got going on. Preload now is for carrier bearing and pinion gear, and what we're looking for is 26 to 46. So right now what we got is about maybe 30, so we're within range on preload. And what we're going to do is measure backlash, which again I've already set. So I've just been using a small punch to tap on these gears. It's not the ideal way to do it. There should be something that goes through the axle, but obviously I don't have that tool, or there's something that goes through both of these like this so that you can crank on this, but I also do not have that. So we're going with this. It's not too bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this up here. So we're going to set this up right on the edge of the tooth here. We're going to set it to 0. Right out there. Now backlash is between 3 and 5 thousandths of an inch. So what I'm trying to do is we're going to 0 out this gauge, and then we're going to hold the pinion and rotate the ring gear. So right now we got about between 3 and 4 thousandths of an inch. So we're actually in spec on both of these. So what we're going to do now is run the pattern and see what it looks like. If it looks good, then we can take it all apart and set our pinion with the accurate bearing and go from there. Alright, so tightened up the bearing caps and then ran the pattern, and as you can see, hopefully you can see on camera, you can see this one's, pattern's laying right in the middle of the tooth. It's not off one side or another. You can see that one there is a real good one. That right in the middle of the tooth. I mean, it's pretty much dead on. And, check the other side. As you can see, there's the other side. So again, pretty much right in the middle of the tooth. And measurements paid off. So all we got to do now is basically take everything apart, take the pinion back out, put it back in with the right bearing, same shim pack, everything like that, put it all back together, and then you know, measure it again, and if it all runs out good the second time, then we should be good to go. Alright guys, so rear end carrier section's all done. Caps are torqued down to 89 foot-pounds. Preload is set, so right now if you measure preload on the pinion, that'll be pinion preload and carrier preload, and it's reading about 30 pounds. You want it, or 30 inch pounds. You want it to be between 22 and 46, so we're good there. Backlash is set. It's in the more open spots, it's about 4 thousandths. In the tightest spots, it's 3 thousandths, with his perfect. That's on the inside spec, but it should be good, and it feels good, sounds good. So I think we're all done here. I'm just gonna the only other thing that you have to put on is the retainers for the preload. So basically this guy just goes right in here like this and just kind of locks that preload ring down. So we'll put both of those in like that, and then we'll be good to go. Next thing we're going to be doing, and I'll probably show you, but I got to slam the races in the end here for the axles, and then we got to cut the old bearings off the axles, replace the seals in the bearings, and then get those put in. Alright, so we got the stuff off the axles here. This is actually the second one. I got a little anxious and forgot to film, but basically all we did was, here's the retainer at the end here, and all we did was just kind of used either the air Dremel or a grinder, whatever would fit in there, to just cut a slice in that, smack it with a chisel, and it just snapped right in half and slid off. Then we popped the outer cage off of the bearing and got that out of the way, which left you with this inner piece. And then basically we just chopped a line in that, hit it with the chisel, smacked it, it came right off. And then I'll show you guys how we're gonna press the new ones on. So this is how we're pressing them back in. So basically we just got it set up here, axles in the, you know, just make sure you got your plate on and your bearing on, or your seal on, and then your bearing, make sure your race is facing the right way, and the retainer, and you're just gonna crank it down and press them on. And that's all there is to it. It goes until it backs out on this, and then you should be able to get your snap ring on the front, and then you're good to go. Alright guys, so that's the video on building the M226 rear end for a Nissan Titan. That rear end, basically with those things breaking, is a pretty common issue up till about 2008. Surprisingly, both of the rear ends, one of them was a 2007 and one of them was a 2008, so it can happen to any of those models of trucks. Now we have a quote-unquote bulletproof rear end, and I'm pretty happy about it. So when the time this video comes out, I've been driving on this rear end for about 1,000 miles now. I did the 500-mile break-in on the gears. I changed the fluid. There was a a tiny little bit of metal in it, nothing major, totally expected. So, and the rear end's been great. All right, so let's talk about the build cost. So most of the stuff I reused, as I showed you in the video. Some new stuff I did buy. Some of the new stuff I bought were axle bearings and axle seals. That was about $110. The rebuild kit for the entire inside carrier area was $180. The True Track is $790. random sealers like the RTV and stuff like that, $15. Fluid times 2, so I put fluid in it originally, and then I changed it at 500 miles. I counted both of those, was about $80. And then the gear set for me was about $175. Again, I used a 354. Some of this stuff I got on a little bit of a discount, like I bought the Detroit TrueTrack and the rebuild kit together, and I think I got 10% off or 15% off. My gear set that I bought, the 354, was only $175. Now it's listed for almost $300. If you want to get a 336 or a 292 gear set, they're more like $300 or $400. So the build cost is obviously an estimate, but for me doing all the work, it was a little around $1,300. So I'd say between $1,300 and $1,500. That's also with everything brand new. So my rear end is completely brand new. Now, if your axle seals, your axle bearings are in good shape, you don't necessarily have to replace those. If your ring and pinion gear is good and it's just your spider gears that are broken, you don't have to replace that either. You also don't have to use a Detroit TrueTrack. There is more expensive ones. You can also get an OEM replacement for pretty cheap. There's also a Spartan locker that you can get for a little bit cheaper. The reason I went with the Detroit TrueTrack is because from everything that I read, that thing is about bulletproof. So you could do this for cheaper. If you want an entirely brand new rear end with you doing the labor, it's going to cost you about $1,300 to $1,500. Again, that's with everything new inside there. So a rear end that I don't have to worry about pretty much for the rest of the life of this truck. So I'm pretty happy about that, especially since I'm going to be towing. I wanted something extra reliable. So I'm happy with what I did. Again, for the cost that I paid for that truck, it was well worth it for me to rebuild that entire rear end and have something that I don't have to worry about. It's been great for me. The rear end's holding out perfect, and you know, that's about it. If you have any questions on this video, because obviously when I was searching for videos on how to do this rear end, there really wasn't a lot of information on it. If I missed something or you have questions, feel free to write me or DM or comment. I check my videos quite frequently. You can follow me here on YouTube at LoLu Racing. I also have an Instagram at LoLu Racing. Most of my stuff isn't generally in this area. It's more Nissan race car stuff. But thanks for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.